Hello and welcome to Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin, and this is the show where you can put our property experts to task with your questions. And joining me today are two of the biggest hitters in property development in the London market. Dave Forde, development consultant and manager and consultant of various projects across London. David Galman, ex-director of Galliard Homes and now development consultant. Welcome to you too.
Thank you.
Good to have you both back. Obviously, I think a lot of our questions are going to be development orientated, so I think we've got the right two people here. Dave, I'm going to start with you. I'm fairly new to the property industry and I'm currently looking to appoint a contractor for a refurbishment programme. Is there an accepted contract format for this type of work, and is there a membership of any particular federation I should look for?
Yeah, I would advise anyone who's looking to use any form of construction contract to pick one from the JCT suite of contracts. That's the Joint Contract Tribunal. They're the industry accepted ones. They cover every single type of project you can ever wish to be involved in. There's roughly about 50 or 60 different ones. So before you make your choice, I would say get some professional advice, because JCT assume that everyone involved in the contract actually knows what they're doing.
Right.
And
that might be a dangerous presumption.
More to the point, is actually going to do what they're supposed to, because a contract isn't just something to protect a client and beat the builder over the head with. It's a joint allocation of risk, and the client themselves have their own legal responsibilities. There are other ones that are accepted. You get Federation of Master Builders, they're used sometimes. Also RIBA, Royal Institute of British Architecture, do their own contracts. But JCT are the go-to ones.
Dave, you say ask an expert before you pick one and get some advice. What sort of person would give you that advice, and would it cost a lot of money? Would they want to further control over things if they're giving you that advice? How would it work?
Okay, so for a start, the person you'd go to would be someone like us or QS.
Right.
And then once the project starts, it is advised to use someone called a contract administrator. Now that's someone who's independent of the two sides, just make sure that each party is actually adhering to what the contract says. They're like a referee, if you like. They are employed by the client, they're paid by the client, but they must remain neutral.
So they would monitor whether the client's paying properly, perhaps, behaving properly in terms of sticking to the specifications, that sort of thing, and then making sure that the contractor delivered the goods.
Exactly, yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Regarding any industry accredited bodies you would look for a contractor, I would say, me personally, my first protocol would be the Chartered Institute of Building. Now, they have a load of contractors, specialist subcontractors who are actually chartered companies. Going on from that, you've got the Federation of Master Builders. They're quite well known throughout the country. I personally know some very, very good building companies who are signed up with the Federation of Master Builders. However, I think it's only fair to say there have been some horror stories in the past.
Yes. I mean, I see on the television every night a lot of these trustawhatever.com and
no, absolutely no. What rate my building at? No.
Right.
No.
Okay. So you're not gonna find these people advertising on the TV, are you?
Not at all.
No. Okay. What about? I think one of the criticisms I've often heard is if when people go to their architects for such advice, the trouble is you then get the architect's sort of pet builder, don't you? And one's never quite sure who's paying who and who's getting what, really. I think would that be a fair comment?
That is a fair comment, but I mean, look, it is a good place to start if you're engaging an architect. why not ask them for recommendations?
Okay. Have you got anything to add to that, David?
I think it's difficult. Don't just trust Dave down the pub, as you say. You've got to go. I mean, you can go by recommendations from people, and you want to go and see those people's work, I suppose, is part of it. And definitely look at the professional associations. You've got to have someone that's got proper professional accreditation behind them for any kind of project.
I think you've got a really good point there, which is go and look at something they've done. And I know some people say, well, that's very difficult because the job's finished and the builder's left the job and it's a private home and all the rest of it. But actually, I think I've always found in the past that if somebody's delighted with their builder, they've had the job done to a really good standard, they tend to be very proud of it, as we all are of our homes, and are only too pleased to give you that recommendation or that endorsement if they're asked. I mean, would you agree with that?
I tend to agree. I think if you, what's the harm in going to see someone's work? I mean, you wouldn't, it's like employing someone for a job. You want references, you want to know what they've done before. I think that's key.
Yeah, good. Okay, all right. David, your question. There seems to be new factors coming into play which will affect the marketability of particular city centre multi-unit residential developments. I'm thinking particularly of the new rental regulations which may make buy-to-let less attractive, and further the lessening of interest from the Asia Pacific areas in investing in UK property. What effect, if any, do the panel think these factors may have? Now, David, just before you answer, what I will say, I read an article yesterday that was sent to me from China saying that there was a huge outflow of money, a huge outflow of high net worth individuals from China, and the UK could look towards big investment from that area again. But I talk to other developers who say that market's just absolutely dead, it's gone.
I think it's somewhere in the middle. And I can speak from a little bit of experience recently. Hong Kong appears to be coming back a little bit, and that would be less investment led, but more a strategic play. They've got the passport and they want to make sure that they're covered if anything happens. They've
got the foothold here already.
It's very important. And mainland China as well, it's more of a strategic play than it is an investment. When they're purchasing, and we've sold many hundreds of properties to Chinese nationals, they're not necessarily looking at their rental yield. Even though if they're buying it for a buy-to-let, they're not really looking at the yield that they're going to get on the letting of the property. They really are looking at what's the best deal I can do, what's the best discount I can get, what's the highest percentage I can get. And that's really where they're playing. And it's a strategic play to get their money out of the country as much as is possible. Now, in terms of the buy-to-let market struggling because of new regulations, that seems to be hitting the housewife specialist that I would have always called them, the housewife landlord that has always had one or two properties tucked away as their pension, and all of a sudden they're looking at it, and if they've got a buy-to-let mortgage on it, they're behind the 8 ball now. They're not in front, and there are so many regulations. There's no tax relief anymore. They've got to get certification. I am told that there's a number of law firms that have moved out of acting on leasehold properties because of the certification for the Building Safety Act, that they're being asked to sign something. Does your client's building qualify under the Building Safety Act? I don't know, would be the lawyer's response. So they can't act. And I think that's happening everywhere.
Yeah, but you know where that's coming from? I mean, that's coming from the lenders, isn't it?
Correct, yeah. The lenders are running scared of these things, along with the fact that the ground rent situation and the leasehold situation still hasn't been solved after many years of promises that it would be, and that everything would move towards a peppercorn. I mean, it kind of is slowly, but has that created a two-tier market, with older properties? I
just don't think that's the issue. I think anybody living in London is used to leasehold and the vagrancies of that particular discipline. I think the real key is whether you can get funding for what you want to buy. And every solicitor that we have on our programs and every developer or agent that comes on said that the conditions that lenders are asking for now are causing a huge delay in conveyancing. Conveyancing has jumped from about 90 days, which is 3 months, to now 150, 160 days between reservation and a contract that's binding.
It can take 6 months to get a mortgage offer these days.
Yeah.
I mean, which is an incredible amount of time.
Well, it really is, and until we solve those fundamental points, I don't think we're going to get much change in anything, are we?
No, there's an awful lot of things to get cleared up, and borrowing is one of them, hugely so.
Okay, well, that's all we've got time for in this half of the show. So join me again after the break. Well, we'll be asking Dave and David more of your questions. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Property Question Time with Dave Forde and David Galman. Welcome back, guys. Dave, do the panel think that the worldwide cost of building materials will significantly rise when the rectification of earthquake damage in Syria, Turkey and Afghanistan begins, and further the reconstruction of war-torn Ukraine cities? Now, we've touched on this before, but is it going to cause a problem across the world?
If it all happened at the same time, obviously it would, but you've got a lot of geopolitical influences in all those different
that's a big word for our
areas you were talking about. If I can change that slightly, we are building in the UK, we are moving towards modular and off-site. Countries like Syria, Turkey and Afghanistan, when they enter their period of reconstruction, they'll be using the traditional concrete and steel. In this country, we're moving towards low carbon concrete. So that would slightly insulate us a little bit from rising build costs. There's currently a big building boom in Russia. Now, I don't know where they're getting their materials from, but with all their money trapped internally because of Western sanctions, that infrastructure boom doesn't show any sign of stopping. Now, they're going to swallow up a load of building materials. I don't know how that's going to affect us. We've got Saudi Arabia as well. They've got a 20-year infrastructure plan that is phenomenal, that will make Dubai look like Southend-on-Sea or Clacton something.
Oh, no.
Maybe not, but you know what I'm saying. There's going to be a lot of pressure for materials over the next sort of 5 or 10 years, and it could well affect us in this country.
Now, we were talking earlier about the cost, or the average cost of some of these very, very tall buildings. If we do take the path of sort of building smaller and probably just a bit quicker really, and using modular construction, which is probably leaning towards lower rise rather than higher rise, is it not, Dave? I don't know.
I don't know. Modular, you can build pretty high.
Can you?
With that, and with off-site construction, where it really comes into its own is in the economy of scale. So that the bigger, the better, the cheaper, the quicker.
And have we got enough of these modular constructors in this country?
We've got too many. That's why they keep going bust, because we haven't got enough sites. It's like me opening a factory to build the best car in the world, but there's no roads to drive on. You know, that's why they have all these problems.
Well, again, I was watching a program about China's attitude to the economy, and there's a guy on there, one of the wealthiest guys in China apparently, who I believe is making Tesla cars, or has agreed to make Tesla cars. And what he's saying is, no, we've decided that we're a manufacturing nation, so I'm going to manufacture. I'm not going to get involved in selling cars or part exchanges or what colours or, you know, whatever else is hitting the market. He said, I'm just going to do what my customer wants and build 10 white ones, 10 grey ones, 10 black ones, and sell them to them and be done with them. Now, I just wonder, are we heading that way a little bit with building, with modular construction? Is it perhaps a good idea that no longer the likes of David's company, for instance, no longer doing these constructions with their own team and their own contractors, or whether we just buy the bits in and put them together like a Lego set?
Well, I can see a point in the future where the companies, the manufacturers, actually become the developers, because they're thinking, we're selling these to people who are making all the profit on the development. Why don't we just buy the land ourselves and develop ourselves?
Yeah, cut the middleman out. Have you ever been called a middleman before? I don't know.
Loads of times.
What's your view of this modular construction?
I think over the years everyone's looked at this modular construction, and it will happen, I am sure. But as Dave rightly says, they're all going bust. They can't get bonded. And I think that's one of the problems why they haven't been used as much at the moment, because the bank giving you the development finance, and if you say I'm using a modular company who probably want 50, 60, 70% up front, which you've got to fund, the banks won't fund that unless there's a bond in place, and I don't think they're strong enough to get a bond. So it's going to take time for it to come to fruition.
And I suppose, what are the regulations about whether these modular bits that you buy actually work or perform as they should? How's that governed?
Listen, we've had all this before. Everything, it works, it's quality assured, it's safe, you know, it has to meet all the British standards, the safety standards and everything. And a lot of these now are accredited with the Mortgage Council of Britain, so there's no problem there.
Right, we're not going back to the days of sort of wood frame buildings that caused all the trouble with the lenders. And
I don't know, wooden frame buildings are excellent for speed, and you've got closed panel timber frames.
Not too good with fire though, are they?
No, all these objections that are constantly here, believe me, these things work, they're good.
You're trying to say I'm being a dinosaur.
I'm not trying to sell anything, mate. I'm not trying to sell anything. I've looked into all this, that it's all good.
Okay.
I think you'll find there's lots, sorry to butt in, I know we don't like that, I apologise. I think there's lots of buildings around here you will find where the bathrooms and so on, they're pods. You would have no idea, but they were built off site, shipped in, pod straight in, and that does help with leaks and sealing and stuff like that, doesn't it? Very much.
How do you cope with the logistics of transport when you're doing a great big block like any of these and you're buying modular bathrooms? And
well, it's even better. I'm looking out the window at a site over there. They're probably going to have, let's say 10,000 deliveries before the time it's finished. When you've got modular, it's just coming on a long trailer with a crane and it's straight up and in.
Right. Sounds a bit too good to be true, really, doesn't it? Anyway.
Progress, mate.
Progress, okay. Yeah. Well, let's progress on to David's question then. Many developers seem to be stalling the progress and indeed commencement of their projects, blaming the cost increases and unpredictability of market prices. What effect do the experts think this will have on the overall market conditions? We're obviously going to lose stock, aren't we?
Well, it's shortage is the answer, isn't it? We've touched on it, and we always seem to touch on it. I don't know how we're going to deal with this structural shortage of property that we have, other than perhaps, as Dave just said, with these modular companies, maybe they could get involved in developing themselves. It's just, the problem is if a scheme's not viable, a developer's not going to build it. And there's lots of reasons why it's not viable. Build costs will be one of them, the cost of land will be another one, the lack of lending, the lack of off-plan buyers, so that the banks are satisfied that they're going to give you the money and you're going to be able to pay it back in good time, along with planning restrictions, planning time. I'm not painting a very pretty picture, but it isn't very pretty out there at the minute.
But as a developer, let's say your guys, your architects, your project managers have come to you and said, look, David, I think we should go modular with the kitchens and the bathrooms or whatever else. What would be the reasons for you not doing that?
Getting funding. I think it would be purely getting funding and looking at the costs to see whether, if it was advised by the construction people that modular was the way to go and it was more cost effective and it would be quicker, so therefore it is more cost effective if it's quicker because your money is out for less, but as long as you can get it funded. Developers do use bank finance to get funding for these things, and if they can't, that's the biggest problem.
But you're having to go out and get funding for a construction firm to come in and do the building, aren't you?
Yes.
Right. I can't quite get my head around what the difference is between having, we talked about contracts earlier. So you have a contract with a modular company and you pay them in stage payments on the way through.
They can't afford to do it in stage payments. I think they're so embryonic at the moment in terms that they won't take it on valuation. And also they've got to build the whole thing. If they're building the whole thing, They want 50, 60, 70% of the costs up front to go and build it. And how do you get that funded by a bank at the moment? That's the problem.
Well, if that was your business, I thought you would get it funded by your bank. Is that not the case, Dave?
I agree with what you're saying there. Maybe I've confused things a little bit using the word modular, because you got modular homes and then you got modular components.
Yeah.
So yeah, these factories that you can't go to them and say, you know, I want 100 modular homes. They've got to put all that money up front, and then you might turn around at the end and go, oh, listen, you know, the deal don't stack anymore, or I can't get the finance. That they're not going to take that risk.
I just thought that would be an inherent part of your finance package for getting the project underway, really.
It's tough enough to get finance as it is at the moment. That's the problem.
Well, yeah, I do
As you know.
that. Yes, I do know that. I've been many years arguing with banks and then arguing about the proceeds afterwards. I think it's usually the case, isn't it? Okay, gentlemen, thank you both very much for coming in today. So, big thank you to Dave Forde. Thank you, Dave, for coming in.
Thank you.
And David Galman, once again, thank you for coming
Pleasure.
in. Wish you both the best of luck with your projects over the next few months. I'm Stephen Galpin. Join me again next time on Property Question Time.